Assalamualaikum and very good morning to everyone. We will begin this session in about 2 minutes. Good morning, Lisa Thorn.
Hello, how are you?
Hi, good morning. I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Good morning, just waiting for Mr. Bensley.
Okay, right. Just gonna wait for Mr. Bill to join in and then we'll start straight away.
I think he's just coming from another meeting, so bear with us.
Okay, no worries.
Anjir.
Tampangnya.
Charge ใช่ไหม Hello.
Good morning, Mr. Bill.
Good morning. Sorry,
How are you?
I'm sorry I'm a little
It's
bit
alright.
late.
It's okay. We understand you're a busy man.
Yeah, today we're going to talk about interiors. Yes, is that right?
Yes. So I'm just going to give some introduction and then I'll cue you in
Okay.
for your session. Yeah, Mr. Bill? All right. Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello and very good morning to everyone. Welcome to the International Design Lab and Competition of Titik Temu closing ceremony. This event is organized by a collaboration of Center of Studies for Interior Architecture, CSIA UiTM, and Himpunan Designer Interior Indonesia, HDRI DKI Jakarta. My name is Sarah Rahman and I will serve you as a moderator for this session. So throughout these couple of weeks, we have witnessed a brainstorming and mentoring session by our students and lecturers from Malaysia and Indonesia, and a presentation from the participants as well, which happened last week on the 23rd of September. So today is a closing ceremony where we have two sessions. The first session will be a closing webinar by our well-known designer Bensley, where he will share his presentation. Moderated by Mr. Daniel Ismail, a lecturer from the Center of Studies for Interior Architecture, CSIA UiTM Alam. And following this webinar, we have an award appreciation and a closing ceremony where the winner for the International Design Lab and competition will be announced. So now, without further ado, I would like to pass this floor to Mr. Daniel, our moderator for our webinar, and to welcome our notable designer, Mr. Bill Bensley. Daniel, the floor is yours.
Okay, can everybody hear me?
Yes, loud and clear, Mr. Daniel.
All right, thank you, Sarah, and thank you, everyone. Dear guests, professionals, academics, and designers, hello and welcome to our fourth webinar session as part of the International Design Lab and Conference Titik Temu. This talk will be the first segment before we move on to the awards and closing ceremony later. So please get comfortable and enjoy the program. For our audiences who are interested to share this stream with others, please share the link to our YouTube channel by searching CSIA UiTM on YouTube. Please be informed that there is a link in the YouTube live chat box and Cisco WebEx chat box to a Google form in which you can fill in your details as an attendant for this talk. Students and university staff will receive training hours and a participation certificate. Now I would like to introduce our invited speaker for today, Mr. Bill Bensley. Bill Bensley is trained as a landscape architect at California State Polytechnic University and an urban designer at the Harvard Graduate School and practices in all the architectural fields, including landscape, interior, and conservation. Established in 1989 in Bangkok and later Bali, Bensley has been designing some of the world's most iconic hotels, resorts, spas, homes, and palaces. With 150 interior designers, architects, landscape designers, artists, and makers, Bensley has designed over 200 resorts, hotels in 30 plus countries and continues to push forward. He is interested in sustainable design and believes to help conserve the environment through sustainability. The topic for today's talk is diversity in interior design approaches in Southeast Asia. Without further ado, Mr. Bill Bensley.
Thank you, Daniel. Nice to be here. Let's dive in, shall we? I'm going to show you a number of case studies. This is my latest project that we finished right before COVID stepped in. and it's a capella in Ubud. And I'll tell you a quick story about that, is that when we first started this project, we had been assigned to do the interiors and the landscape only. And I was working with a local architect who suggested on this site to build 120 rooms. And it was a big building that just sort of rolled down the site and then took out, like a big tsunami, it took out everything in its path. So if we had built this, there wouldn't have been a tree left on site. I whispered into the ear of the owner, Mr. Suito, very nice man, first time he's ever built a hotel. I said, Suito, should we really be doing this? Because we're going to destroy your site. He said, well, what do you have in mind? And I said, well, maybe we do something that's really has a minimal impact on the environment. And that I knew we could do something like this. It's a 24-room hotel. It's 24 tents that sit up on stilts that rather tiptoe through the forest. That do not disturb the drainage patterns, and we didn't cut down even one tree. And it took me a long time to figure out where to put the buildings, where to put these tents. But the key is to make small footprints when we're doing something like this, so that you could fit them between the trees. So we built this beautiful series of tents, which sits high up on the platform above the jungle floor. The drainage patterns are never disturbed, so they just continue underneath the tents, and all of the equipment, like air conditioning and such, are they're underslung underneath the floor, so we don't see them. That allows us to keep really very, very clean ceilings, so there's no air conditioning coming up inside of the ceilings. The tents are just what we call Ferrari fabric, which is it's a fabric that will stand the test of time and last for many years. And I used a real dark gray fabric in order to be able for the project to recede into the forest. I feel, especially in Bali, because I started going there and visiting there in 1984, Bali has been overbuilt. And I feel very strongly that if we are to build there, that we should take the attitude, let's build like this, where we're almost hiding instead of building like this, as standing up and being too proud. So I think that the fact that we built something that hides in the forest is a very good thing, that disappears and does not disturb. Once again, I use the term minimal intervention. Interior-wise, we did something very interesting in that all of the beds, much of the furniture, the bedside tables, this bed head, for example, they're all architectural remnants. They are that I found in the junk shops, and I love buying junk. I love searching through garbage, and I believe very strongly that to do a new hotel, you do not need to have everything brand new. So that beds like this that have the kiss of a century, that have this patina that is so much more special than anything new from IKEA or where even if you design it yourself. I bought a lot of artwork that is sometimes 150, 200 years old, and that those sort of things are available through Holland and through Jakarta and through the old Batavia, and so that I could, by doing so, I had the ability to make every single room different. And I had the idea of that this is a camp that was actually built in the 17th century, and it represents a Dutch army camp that came to take the slaves from Bali. And that, believe it or not, this is a story that's not told very often. The Dutch came 4 times in order to collect people, to make them slaves in Batavia or Old Jakarta. And the Balinese fought them back, pushed them back. So this is a story of what could have been a Dutch army camp. So there's a camp for the armory, there's a camp for the gunkeeper, there's a camp for there's a tent for the captain, there's a tent for the map maker, there's a tent for the surveyor, for all the people that would have traveled in a Dutch army doing what they had to do. We made this fantasy idea of this is what it might have looked like back in the 17th century. So it's and here my models dressed up as though that they were actually Dutch explorers here, and that was the idea here with this photo shoot that I did. The inside here, the interiors here are really punctuated, I think, by a beautiful floor, which has a hand finished dimpled look, and every single unit, every single tent has its own lining, and these linings we had printed. Some of them we had printed, and then some of them we found on Jalan Surabaya down in Denpasar, the old Badung. This is the ceiling. This is the ceiling of our main restaurant, and we call that the lumbo, or the rice barn. And this is the way that the Balinese were painting in the 17th century. And they had a very limited way of painting, that they weren't painting in 3-dimension yet, but they were painting in 2-dimension, and of course telling the stories of Ramayana, because that goes on forever. We had a local atelier in Ubud to paint these, and it took about 1.5 years to paint all of these. But they used only the natural dyes that were available at the 17th century. I thought that was rather interesting. Okay. Then, so long story short, we made a place which is very Balinese, very unique in that idea. We did not cut down one tree. We didn't change the drainage patterns. We had these rooms have no walls. They have just a very thin tent. They have no television. They have no room service, because we want everyone to come back into camp and eat. But it's become the world's Bali's most expensive hotel now, and it's also the world's #1 hotel, travel and leisure #1 as of last year in 2020. So my first-time client, Mr. Suwito, he's so very happy and he also spent about half as much, or less than half as much, as he originally wanted to. And so it's a win-win situation when you can understand and respect Mother Nature. It always works. My next project is a beautiful little project. It's a rosewood in Luang Prabang, and that's my favorite place in Laos. And the very interesting part about this project for me was that it sat inside of a UNESCO heritage zone, and this was the first time that I had to work with the guidelines put forth by UNESCO, and it won't be the last time, because I loved it. They have very strict guidelines of how big you can build, and in what vernacular, what type of styling that you can build. So we had to build in a French colonial style that was popular in between 1880 and about 1930. That's when the peak of the French colonials were there. So this is actually, I built on the foundation of an existing building, and this is what what was there originally. This is what we put together in our own mind. Again, it's a very small hotel. I love small hotels. I think they're much more interesting to visit than, being one of 483 rooms. This has something like 30 rooms. And the real fun part about this project is that, as you can see up here on the upper left, we did five of those 30 rooms to represent the hill tribes of Laos. And there's still a lot of hill tribes there. So each one of these tents are different. And so that the entire hotel, all 30 rooms put together, is like a time capsule of what is Laos. And for example, this room here was honoring an entomologist, the person that studies insects, as he went on the 1877 trip that the French organized up the Mekong. It was the first time white people went up the Mekong, and it took them 2 years on foot to do this, and they made many sketches along the way. So this is a way of doing interior design that also teaches people something new. And I think that's very important for you students to understand, is that we don't always need to make interiors that look pretty. It's more meaningful if your interiors can have a purpose. For example, again, this is the bathroom. And I wanted this bathroom to be all about the temple, the art of temple making, and the art of using gold and using stenciling, and both on the floors, the ceilings, and the walls, and using the traditional woodworking. So this particular bathroom was all about the local craftsmen of Laos. So it teaches a guest something, and that I think is very important, because anybody can make a room look nice, but to make it look nice and meaningful and teach somebody adds another layer to what you're doing, and adds another layer to what the guest experiences. And I wrote a book about this particular hotel just by alone, and these are some of the objects that we have in each of these particular rooms. There's one room that's specifically devoted towards a man named Cuvier, and he was a French scientist that all of the people that came after him into France studied. So he was a very big influencer. Auguste Pavie, he was the guy that owned that. Actually, he lived there in that first house, that first lobby shot that I showed you. And we made one room about King Kamsok. He was the Playboy king of Laos. And there's a stamp made after him. And then one of my favorite villas is this André Volet. She was a great artist. So we dived in, and I must have read 50 books, and read for something like 6 months before we really decided who are the most important people to champion about the Laotian history. Interesting. Next project, next case study is that we did an M gallery, which is by Accor. And it is done in Vietnam, and it represents, it teaches our guests. Again, it's a small hotel, it's about 100 rooms or so, but it teaches our guests about the the history of this one particular Yen Tu, which was a Vietnamese king who left being a king behind, left all his riches behind, and he became a Buddhist monk. And this is where he was buried, but the people go there a lot to pay homage to him. So we were asked to do a hotel in this particular valley. So I took it very seriously and studied very much his tomb, which is right up here. I'm going to zoom into that. His tomb is right here. So we ended up doing all of this work based on a tiny little building up here in the tomb. And so all of this, you can see that all of this architecture, it all has the same language right throughout. And using the very simple materials, big, thick walls, because they didn't have concrete and reinforced steel at that time. So we seemingly used what was available at that time in the 14th century when Yen Tu became a Buddhist monk. The interiors are interesting as well, is that we have to have a certain amount of comfort, much more so than the 14th century, but I thought to myself, how could we pare down the materials so that it feels like it could have been in the 14th century? So instead of doing headboards, which is a requirement, we did these big hanging pillows. And instead of doing painted surfaces and for our wallpaper example, I used what we knew they had, and those were rice sacks. Those were burlap rice sacks. We knew that they had those particular materials. We knew that when they did plaster work, we knew that they mixed in rice with the mud. So that's what we did. We knew here. This is the entrance into the ballroom. We knew that they had also the ability to use metal, and so that we made these big abstract versions of the Yen Tu arch, I call it. So, and we also knew that at that time they had a saffron, and that saffron was very popular for people to wear. So that's why the dominant color of saffron is here. So every step of the way, every step of the way, we used every detail we used in order to tell a story, to add to the DNA of Yen Tu and the thing that we wanted to teach. Now, this is an interesting couple of slides in here, is that I wanted to create in the lobby itself a situation that was pre-Buddhist for Yen Tu. So this is representing all the luxury and the wealth and the circumstance that the Yen Tu might have had before he left to become a Buddhist. Okay. The next slide here is a fun project that we had in Belmont Farms in St. Kitts. That's in the Caribbean. And the owner, really wonderful person, he's from Trinidad and Tobago, Val Kempadu, came to us and said, I know that you are very much an architect based on sustainability and based on you're also a landscape architect, and this is what he wanted to do. We built the world's first edible golf course. so that every tree, every plant is edible. And we brought over something like, for example, 22 different types of bananas. And we planted those throughout our golf course, and you can see them here. The big problem with the Caribbean is that after the idea of raising sugar went out, somebody needs to mute, because I'm hearing myself. After the idea of sugar went out of the Caribbean, then everything had to be brought in by ship, which is a real shame because the soils in the Caribbean are very rich. That's why they planted sugarcane there. So the idea behind this, the purpose of this hotel, was to make a Johnny Appleseed statement. And that very simply is that we wanted to be able to spread food producing plants throughout the islands. And so once we had this huge area where we had something like 300 different types of food bearing trees, and after we had enough and they were well established, on Saturdays we would open up our nursery and to the villagers, and they would come in and we would give away the pups from the banana trees, and we would give away cuttings and so forth, and they'd go back to their village. And till today, that's what's getting them through COVID, because for the last 2 years there's been no tourism on St. Kitts, but they've had this ability to eat from our farms, which is really, really heartening. Interior wise, we went very much a vernacular architecture from the Caribbean. And you can see here very small openings, and the shutter is very important because of the hurricanes that come through here. And that what I just showed you here, this is our guest room. And on the left-hand side, on the right-hand side over here, we have a big porch. And on the left-hand side, our bathroom is outside on a porch. And that bathroom looks like something like this right here. So that the WC is inside of a series of shutters, and the shower here, that's the shower rose. The shower rose is also inside a couple of showers. So you have privacy. The bathtub is out in the open, but the wonderful thing about this bathroom is that it's very open and you can see out to the neighboring islands in here. And people love it. People absolutely love it. Okay. This is number 4, I think, of the case studies. It is a drawing of a hotel in Sapa, which is up in the mountains up in North Vietnam. And this is me with a silly hat on. And what's happening here is that it's a story about inspiration. And this is the hotel up in the clouds. This is the front elevation of the reception desk, and down here on the right is the elevation of our all-day dining of a big restaurant. But I put this silly hat on for a point, in that inspiration can come from anywhere. And in actuality, I bought this hat in Paris many years ago when I was first starting the project. And I was going through all these junk stores, all these garbage stores that I love to buy things in. And I found this hat, and it was a Vietnamese hat, clearly on the inside, but on the outside, it had very clearly a 1920s white and red polka dot fabric. And I thought, gosh, this is very interesting, in that it's clearly an amalgamation of Hill Tribe Vietnamese, but haute couture of France. And I thought, well, gosh, I could make an entire hotel based on this hat. Just that one idea alone. And that's what we did. We built an entire hotel based on a hat. So if you, for example, if you look in here to the front door here, all of these objects, again, I was buying junk from stores, but they're 1940s spools of thread that came from a factory in Paris. Those were used, but I reorganized the thread so that you could see them. And so the entire hotel is about how the hill tribes and how the Vietnamese influenced haute couture of the France in 1920s. So that's thus all of the hats, the French hats, the mannequins, the televisions that came a little bit later. But everything about the entire hotel has the DNA that started from that hat. That silly hat that sits on top of my head. For example, this is in the same hotel. This is the indoor swimming pool, and it's based very much on a French style of classical architecture. But if you look closely at each one of these chandeliers, they're very, very much hill tribe oriented. And for example, too, this is the master suite. All of the lamps in here, all the curtains, all the fabrics in here, they're all the indigos and has the bells and the whistles of everything that a hill tribe woman would wear in her hair. But the form of the beds and so forth, the form of the chair, these bergère chairs and so forth, they're all very much French. So it's that collision, that tension, that energy that you can get by colliding two unexpected entities, French and hill tribe, that makes this project work. Okay, number 5. This is a project that I'm just building right now in Jakarta, in Indonesia, and it's all about batik. And I love batiks. So this is the elevation of a guest room, and it is based on 19th century, the very old batiks. And I wanted to do something that modernized the idea of batik itself. So these are a lot of the and this is the mock-up room that we just finished last week. And we're doing all the paintings and so forth in my office in Bali. And it's not open yet, but I think when this does, it's gonna tell a story. And again, the purpose of this hotel is to be able to tell the story and to champion the DNA of batiks. Okay, this project is one of my favorites. It's called the Siam in Bangkok, and this project is built in the old town of Bangkok, and where everything it's around the old palace and so forth. And I wanted to build a project that felt like it's not out of place, that it's part of the old town. So when you enter, this is the front door of the hotel. When you enter into a garden courtyard, which is very unusual because most of the hotels in Bangkok, you go through a glass door and you come into a polished floor and air conditioned that's way too cold and outside is way too hot. And here you enter into, in every space, the main atrium is filled with plants, and here it's filled, it's very much like my house at home. You come into a small hotel courtyard, and this is some of the guest rooms here. Once again, they're all different because they are only 36 rooms. And these are the corridors. My client was a third generation antique hoarder. So we had something like 5,000 unique pieces of art and antiques in which to display in the hotel. And then this is my best friend here, Bobby. He's a Jack Russell. And this right here is an interesting concept. In just a small corner of the project, we did a very classic Art Deco interior. But the exterior of this, we wanted to use a reflective modern glass, because we wanted to reflect Connie's cottage, who was a friend of Jim Thompson. We wanted to reflect her cottage, her Thai house. You can just see that in here in this reflection of the glass window, in order to have that, again, that contrast between new and old. That's what this is here. Oops, that doesn't work. Okay. Once again, number 6 or 7. This is a project that we did in Phuket, and it is, again, the purpose of this hotel is to tell people about the history of Phuket. And yes, it's a pretty hotel, and yes, it's a pretty hotel, and it has, you know, a nice lobby, and it has, you know, a good gift shop and a library and a great bar here. This is a great shot of the bar. But the real purpose of the hotel was to say that and I bet none of you guys know this, even though Phuket is very close to Malaysia, the history of Phuket was tin mining. And actually on this beach site, very close to the airport, was a tin mine. So I found this out about their family, and I said, wow, can you tell me more about it? And so I actually went to their old mines, which were closed, and I picked up out of the trash, Bill Bensley, the trash digger. I got these old tin bags. And so these were the original tin bags that they used in order to sell the tin. And the tin ran out, and of course they got left holding the bag. So that we made these big punka walla fans out of these tin, and this is all of the things that I found in their old houses and such. So this was great grandmother over here, and this is great great grandfather, and this is some of the tin that was actually on the sheds of their tin mine. So I brought to the idea of the history of tin mining, which is very unusual to bring into a resort. Why would you want to bring a tin mining into a resort? That doesn't work, but it did work, and people appreciated the fact that they can learn something. So this is, again, the tin mine. We did a big spa here, where this spa is floating and hanging in this big tree and so forth. And then finally, I think we're shifting to now some of my own paintings. Over the last 3 years or so forth, I have been painting on a very big scale. Painting fun projects like this, where we have, this is kind of neat, we have a mosque in here and a church over here, and they're deciding which way to go. This one's called You're Too Blue. This guy is slightly less blue than these two guys. He's the head lifeguard, and he's saying, you guys aren't going to advance because you're too blue. It's my statement about color and racism. I think that really the only thing that we need to separate by color is our laundry before we do it, right? I think and these are some of the paintings that I've been doing recently. And I am all of my paintings, actually they're for sale this month, and everything that I sell this month goes towards COVID relief here in Bangkok. And I sold something like $60,000 worth of paintings last month, and all of that money goes towards conservation in Cambodia. So that's something that I do personally. And I think the final inspiration that I wanted to talk to you about is a project that we did in Singapore. And I always like to start with art. And in this particular project, I singled out my favorite artist from the American pop, well, other than Andy Warhol. My favorite artist is Keith Haring. So I said to my staff, my designers, we've got about 150 here, let's do this project based on what would Keith Haring have done in this situation had he been able to take these two condominium towers as they are in Singapore? What would he have done? I mean, he's long gone and dead now. But so these were examples of all of the things that I think he may have done. And again, the purpose of that project is to teach people about who is Keith Haring. A project that we've just finished about 3 months ago. It's in Hanoi. It's a capella. It's a small hotel. Here's my sketch of that hotel with the angel up on the top. But this is right around the corner from the opera house. And so I took that was my inspiration. So out of these 37 rooms, we made each room champion a particular artist, a stage designer, a composer, singer, and designer of the opera. So each one of these rooms is devoted towards a particular character. And once again, and why was that? To teach people about the history of the opera. And even if you're not interested in the history of opera, something is going to rub off on you. And when somebody can learn something new in a hotel, that they have a tendency to go back to that hotel. So it's not just about, well, Bill Bensley's crazy and he likes weird things, and it's about, as designers, and you guys are going to graduate soon as designers, if you can differentiate yourselves from other designers by way of meaningful and purposeful design that teaches people something, then you will be more successful. Guaranteed. 100%. Sure, Bob. 100%. Aha. Again, this is the St. Regis in Bali, and I said to my staff, what if we look at a project design, and we said, okay, Osamu Noguchi, he's a Japanese-American designer in the 1950s. What if Osamu Noguchi had lived here in Bali? What sort of influence would he had on the artist? And what sort of sculptures would he have been influenced? How would the Balinese have influenced him in order to do his sculpture? So we made something like, we designed in-house, something like 100 beautiful sculptures that were Osamu Noguchi influenced. And once again, to teach people about Osamu Noguchi and perhaps that confluence of these two different cultures. So you're seeing a trend here, I hope. Luang Prabang, Rosewood Luang Prabang, we just talked about that, and the Mekong exhibition very much in detail. and rosewood. Now, I know you guys are interior designers, but I do want to tell you about this particular method that I have for building in the wilderness, for building in a place that's very site sensitive. This is the key. It's a simple bamboo house. And that bamboo house, that allows you to actually work within the confined areas of a jungle. If you have a dense forest like I had with Capella and Ubud, this is a very key idea. So that this string on the floor, that represents this string right here, that represents the floor, and this represents the peak of the building. So that I know, because I've got these up in here. I know that if I get up on a ladder up on here and I can see over the top of this, then it's going to work. And I can't always get this on paper. You can't do this on paper. You can't do this very well on paper. So this is a very critical exercise. And also one of my secrets is the hula skirt. This allows us to build buildings around coconuts or around trees. And this has 3 different layers. On the inside is a plastic sheet, which looks ugly, but it works. Then on the outside of that is called ijuk. On the outside of that, we use an alang-alang. And we use an ijuk rope in here and tali rafia to be able to shed the water, but it also allows those trees then to move. So that our presidential, this goes down to the presidential villa, and our presidential villa actually has 7 coconuts growing right through the whole villa. So that means you're taking, this goes down to a presidential villa as well here too. It means you're taking your priority into Mother Nature first. And when you can do that, you'll always win. I think we're out of time, yes?
No, Bill, we still have around 15 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I have maybe 5 more minutes here. I'd like to tell you about a project that we did some years ago now. It's very much, it's my first high yield, low impact project. It's a 4 seasons tented camp. And it was from 2006 to 2009, #1 hotel in the world for 3 years in a row. No one's been able to do that since. And this was a huge piece of land, but its DNA or its purpose in life was elephants. And as I told you just now, is that I've been living here in Bangkok since 1984. And when I first came here, because of the moratorium of forestry,
tak boleh. Dia dah cakap dia kata memang dia unlock nanti dia betul.
yeah, because of the how to say, the moratorium on taking trees out of the jungles, the elephants were no longer employed. So the elephants all came to Bangkok where they could at least eat. But the problem was when they were in town, that while they were being fed sugarcane and so forth, they were eating, they were also getting hit by cars. So that my intention was to take this huge piece of land that my client had up in Chiang Rai, which is on the Chinese, on the Laotian Burmese border. It's called the Golden Triangle. My intention was to buy all of these elephants off the streets, and then we brought 36 elephants onto this beautiful property. So this property became famous because you could understand and you could ride the elephants, you could walk with the elephants, and they're still there today, and they're very happy. And all the girls here are just, they're real happy. So that was a really key environmentally sustainable project that really launched me into environmentalism. And it was the key project that brought me to my final case study, and this is my own project. It's my own project. It's called the Shintamani Wild. It's a Bensley collection. That's my last name. And I bought this huge piece of property. It's about 1,000 hectares at an auction that was meant to sell people land for either mining or for forestry. And this land was at the edge of the Cardamom National Forest. It's actually part of Cardamom National Forest. And I bought this land with the intention of protecting it. And so I thought, well, since I've just done this Four Seasons in northern Thailand, perhaps I can, and it's very popular, perhaps I could do something similar or better. But I think what we've done is something better, in that the only way to come into this camp is by climbing a 10-story tower and then zip lining almost a kilometer over these waterfalls into the lobby, into the headquarters. And this took the tourism industry by storm. And people loved it. In fact, we've had movie stars and singers like Ed Sheeran, all sorts of really top level guests here. This is a big porch. Every tent has a porch. We only have 15 tents, but each tent per night costs something like $2,500. So it's a high yield, meaning it's expensive, but low impact, meaning on the land that we have, we didn't cut down, once again, we didn't cut down one tree or move any soil. And it's very temporary, if you will. We could, if we wanted to, within a couple of months, we could take everything out of there if we wanted to. It's all temporary structures. And I think that is the way to build, if you have to build in a national park. Now, the reason that I did that is the purpose of this particular project was that in Cambodia, unlike Malaysia, that there's not much restrictions on who can take what from the national parks. So there's like a mafia, if you will, who creep into the forest during the nighttime and cut down trees, and they set up snares. And these guys down here, they are forests. There are saints. They are part of Wildlife Alliance. And I hire about 115 of these fellas and with AK-47s to protect the environment, to protect the forest. And for example, during the last 6 years that I've been doing this, we have collected over 800 chainsaws. We've seized over 800 chainsaws. And you know that one chainsaw alone can clear a football field in 3 days, a football field of trees. So they do an enormous amount of damage. So these guys are in the field every single day, and they pick up snares, something like to the average of about 20 to 30, just in our area, about 20 to 30 snares every day. And those snares, they'll kill anything from a baby elephant to clouded leopards. And we lost our clouded leopard to a snare this last week. It's still ongoing terribly. I want to also to tell about, as interior designers, you also need to get involved in things like this. And I think this is very important in that we were the first hotel in Cambodia to eliminate single-use plastics. We don't need any of that stuff. We were also the first company, I own 4 Shintamani's. We're also the first company in order to get rid of, plastic bottles. So we have a bottling plant in here. And then this right here is a QR code. If you scan that code, you will get my paper. It's a white paper. It's called Sensible Sustainable Suggestions. And it has all of these ideas in it and more. And it's not just about getting rid of single-use plastics to the front of house, but it's also about getting rid of single-use plastics in the back of house and the supply chain. So this is something that we invented, is that we have yellow for meats and green for vegetables and red for red meats. And these are the series of boxes that we use, and they're recyclable. We've used them now for many years, but these boxes go back to our suppliers, and if they wrap anything in plastic, we don't accept it. So this is the only way we get food and materials back into our camp. In fact, all 4 of our hotels. So that is a way in order to get rid of single-use plastics completely. And other hotels like Four Seasons and One and Only and whatnot, we're thinking about doing it, and we did it overnight. The purpose of my particular Shintamani project is that one, we give small loans. We have, again, this Johnny Appleseed idea. We distribute plants throughout the community in order for people to eat better. And then this is my hospitality school. So every single year we graduate something like 35 unfortunate kids, young adults, and they then get immediately sucked up into the hospitality community of Siem Reap. So it helps a lot of people, these particular hotels, and that's the purpose of that particular hotel. And oh boy, okay, this one's the last one for sure. The great project that I'm working on right now is I'm making an entire hotel out of recycled trains. And the recycled trains look like this before we start, and then they'll end up something looking like this. This is this particular project. This particular train is the presidential suite, and it's 44 meters long by 2.5 meters. These are the recycled trains, and part of the hotel looks like a train station. But I think that we need to start thinking laterally about how we can recycle and how we can recycle on a big scale. And by starting with, and there's nothing wrong with this, start with garbage, start with things that people don't use anymore. Think about how to take really good stuff like this right here, and while it might be a lot of work, but this is the way we have to think about saving our planet. It's not about specking from a catalog. It's about go out and understand what's in your community. What can I reuse? What can I recycle? And how can I be less of a burden on this planet? So I'm going to end right there. Any questions?
All right, thank you, Bill. I think I will check the chat box for any questions, and maybe we can read from there, and we can have a short question and answer session. All right?
Okay.
All right, so there is a question here. What trends do you predict for the future of interior design in Southeast Asia?
Well, I think I hate the word trend, but I think I just spent an hour telling you about where I think we should be going is I think we should be more environmentally sensitive and try to recycle as much as we possibly can in every opportunity we can.
Right. The second question, what are the biggest challenges you have overcome during your previous projects?
The biggest challenges. The biggest challenges. I did before. I had a lot of big challenges earlier in my career, but now that I have a history of doing environmentally correct projects which are financially successful, I have much less problems now. So I have very, very few challenges in my life. Now, I have a mantra that I say to myself very frequently: if it's no fun, don't do it. And I think that's really true for everybody. If you're not having fun, you're not going to do a good job at it. So if the challenges are too much, then do something else.
Okay, and there is a question from our YouTube channel as well. Is there a country or region in Southeast Asia that you feel is currently leading the way in interior design, innovation, and creativity?
Their country?
Yeah.
No, it has to be Malaysia.
I think that's a politically correct answer. All right, and then I think I'll take maybe 3 more questions if that's okay with you, Bill, and then we'll end up the session. All right, before you execute a design, what are the main values will you consider during or throughout the design process?
Number one, is understanding your site, understand the idiosyncrasies of especially if it's a natural site. Go there and sit on it and let the site speak to you. If it's not on a natural site, then think about the history. If it's something like an urban site, then think about what happened. We just talked about the Capella in Hanoi. What happened on that site before? And that particular site was a small hotel before. It had a history of being, during the war, of being a place in which armory was kept, in which gunpowder was kept, and in 1.2, it was a whorehouse. So it had all of this interesting history to it. So think about, don't just scratch the surface and look through the modern, magazines and so forth. Oh, this is nice. This is trending. This is really cool. I should put this in my designs. Don't do that. I mean, everybody does that. Think very carefully about the context of where you're building and try to bring some purpose and some value and also something that people can learn to your interiors.
Okay, and I think I will add my own question for you as well, Bill, if that's okay. So from your background as a landscape architect, we understand that you have a talent with engaging with the environment, designing for the environment, and really understanding your site context in a natural way. How is that important in designing for the interior?
Daniel, there is, I strongly believe this. I think that, as an interior designer, as a landscape architect, as an architect, everything meshes totally. And an architect cannot do good work if the interior designer does not do good work. A landscape architect cannot do good work unless the architecture is good. And that's why I created this atelier where we look at all subjects, because everything is combined. And if a project is not environmentally sensitive on which it sits, then the interiors are never going to be very good. If we're not all singing the same song, then it's not going to be good. So get it out of your head that I'm just designing the interior, so I don't have to worry about the environment. That's not true. And I gave you many examples already about how, and this is primarily, this project here that I'm circling, that's primarily an interior project. But we're putting your interiors inside of a garbage can. And that is what we need to do in the future. So get it out of your head that interiors are divorced from things that are environment. Everything is all about the environment. Everything we do.
All right. All right. We have two more questions from our chat. The first one is, before you execute a design, what are the main values will you consider during or throughout the design process?
Environment and history, we talked about that already.
All right. Next question from Mr. Ahmed Haki. Your design ideas are extraordinary. Have you had queries regarding maintenance issues due to the design that you created?
Everything we do, every move we make, you have to consider, how is something going to be maintained in the future? And if you can't put things out into the public, you can't open a hotel where it's difficult to maintain. So that is very much part of our day-to-day work. It's it's second nature at this point.
All right, I think that's all the questions that we have, and the timing is on point. Just as a closing remark, I want to thank Bill and his team for the time and the opportunity to have you as a guest speaker today on our program, and for showing us the importance of our region, how it's important to incorporate the history, the culture, and also the environment, and how it can give a narrative to our design. So thank you, Mr. Bill.
Sama-sama.
All right, without further ado, I think I will hand over the session to Ms. Sarah.
Thank you, Mr. Daniel, and thank you so much again, Mr. Bill Bensley, for the insightful and inspirational presentation. It's amazing to hear all the narrative behind all this project that you did, and I believe all that involved with a lot of research, because you mentioned a lot about teaching the user, about something, about the culture, about the sustainability, which I think it's amazing, and it's part of our job as a designer, right? So,
right.
if you don't mind, we would like to have a photo session with you, with all the committees. One, Zarina will help us to screenshot. If you don't mind, Mr. Bill, can you unshare your screen?
Unshare?
Yeah.
Okay.
Stop presenting. If you can see the share button at the top, at the bottom of your screen.
Bagaimana? Noi, tolong saya. Yeah.
It's okay, no rush.
Okay. Share. Oh, okay. Saya ada. Okay, baik.
Alright, thank you. So, I hope everyone can switch on your camera. And Puan Zarina, if you can assist us to screenshot the screen.
Sure, no problem. Okay, on three. 1, 2, 3. Okay, a few more pages to go. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. All right, thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye, thank you so much, Mr. Bill.
You're welcome.
Take care, stay safe.
Thank you. Terima kasih. Jumpa lagi.
Sama-sama. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that will be the end of our webinar session. Before we proceed to our next agenda, we're just going to allow a 5 minutes break for our technical team to reset our YouTube live in our YouTube channel. So 5 minutes break, and then we'll start with our next agenda, which is the announcement for the winner of International Design Lab and Competition.